for rejecting my husband's offer to join him for a family funeral after he explicitly uninvited me? I'll try to keep this brief. Husband, 28M, and I, 30F, have been together for a decade. Have a house together, no kids, we both work, we have a couple of dogs, the works. We met in college, I was local, he was from out of state. All of his family therefore lives out of state. When he graduated we stayed in my state, as he didn't want to move back to his home state. This past week his grandfather passed away. He was over 100 years old, so while the family has been bracing for his passing for a number of years, the actual passing was quite sudden and unexpected. I of course was there for him when he found out, helped him and his family in arranging Grandpa's funeral services, etc. They decided on an intimate viewing with burial right after. I respect that completely. I asked my husband how he's getting back home in such a short period of time. I offer to drive, we price check against bus tickets, train tickets, planes, etc. He says he'd like to go alone because he's concerned about finances, and besides, our dog takes daily medications and I need to stay home to manage this. I'd already let my bosses know I may need to take time off, and had already arranged with a neighbor to be on call for medicating our dog, but okay, I understand his point. We can't afford to both get tickets out, that's fine. Just let me know how I can support you, you know? The funeral is planned for Wednesday. He originally says he need to be there Tuesday, so he will work on flying out Monday. Then he decides he will just drive, and volunteers my car, not his, for this trip. I say that's fine, and since we no longer need to worry about buying tickets, does he want me to join him to support him after the funeral? He says no, that it should just be family, and ultimately he wants to be there 100% for his dad with no distractions. I'm a little hurt, but at the end of the day, it's his family and his grief and it isn't about me. Then he decides that he should really leave Friday night. That way he has time to get there and spend some time with his family before the funeral and he won't have to miss work. He says he wants to work from home the Monday and Tuesday and he will only need to take off the Wednesday and he'll be driving home after, getting him home that night. Okay, seems fair. A little longer than I expected, but again, his family, his job, not my say. Yesterday he calls me to let me know his family has decided to play hooky on Monday and have a big get-together, including his sister and her husband, and his brother and his wife and kids. He also informs me that he will probably stay through the week so as to not miss any work unnecessarily and will return home Sunday. At this point my feelings are incredibly sore. He's assured me for years that I am part of his family and that I'm not an outsider, even though I have felt that way often. He first disinvited me because of finances, then when finances were no longer the issue he said it was because it was an intimate family gathering, but his siblings-in-law are welcome? He's concerned about missing work and wants to stay even longer but is willing to be off his computer Monday without calling off to go to a big impromptu reunion? Then he has my car and leaves me with his busted van for twice as long as he originally was going to be gone. I let him know I was feeling hurt, and even though I knew it wasn't about me and it was a mournful event and I didn't hold things against him, I did feel very specifically excluded and like I wasn't part of his family. He said I was being selfish and I've been keeping my distance from him in terms of communication sense. Today he texted me to ask when I wanted him home as his siblings were going to take some time off if he were allowed to stay longer so they could all catch up and go out and all that jazz. I told him to just come home when he wanted and to give me 24 hours notice so I could watch to make sure he got home safe. It's a 12-hour drive and we share our locations. I then turned off notifications as I was pretty heated. Now he's blowing up my phone saying they want to buy me a one-way ticket out to be with them. At this point I've already told my bosses I won't need the time off. I told my neighbor he won't be needed after all and he's already made plans for the week. I've made plans to see friends, work on the house, etc. I called him and said no, that I had been excluded from the start and I wasn't going to scramble to make plans to assuage whatever guilt he felt when he was called out. He said that it was a hard week and his grandfather just died, and that I was being an asshole for not giving him grace and understanding. I feel like I've given him nothing but grace and understanding from the start. So before I say anything I regret, Reddit, am I the asshole? Due to Elle's lack of involvement with her care over the years and the fact that he kept taking money from her account without asking, even though he'd pay it back, she decided to remove him from the house and rewrite her will to name only M as executor. She wanted the house to stay in the family. Elle just wanted to sell it for the money. M only wanted the house. M couldn't have cared less about the other monetary assets. She was in the process of taking Elle off her accounts when she passed. Elle found out then that he wasn't executor anymore. Mind you, she didn't completely disinherit him. He's still entitled to 50% of the estate. The money in her account was supposed to be split between the grandkids, Elle's included. M called Elle to tell him that grandma had passed and he was waiting for the nurse to confirm. Elle said he was on the way. For context, he lives 15 minutes away. He didn't show for 2 hours. Come to find out, he emptied her account before she was even legally declared dead. I told M that was illegal and he should press charges, but at the time, M didn't want to because it's his brother. M still had medical bills for grandma to pay, plus the inheritance for the grandkids, including myself and fiancé. Funeral goes okay, but L refused to speak about his own mom. M was the only one who did. A few days later, L and C show up at the house. L sends C to the door to ask for the death certificate. M goes out to talk to L and explains that he needs it for settling the estate and if L wants one, he can go to the court and get one. L and C peel out of the drive screaming about taking M for all he has. Grandma drew up a ladybird deed, aka, a quick claim deed for the house when she rewrote the will. So, immediately M goes and files it to put the house in his name. Then a week later, L's lawyer sends a letter fishing for info on what was paid out to myself and fiancé's sister S for her care. Implying that half of that money was his, but that's ridiculous because he's not entitled to anything she spent while still alive. So, at this time, M has submitted everything to probate court because L has made comments about contesting the last will, trying to say she wasn't of sound mind at that time, just because she was bedbound. This couldn't be farther from the truth though. She was sharp as a tack until the last week. M has since decided that he will be taking every penny he's entitled to instead of giving it all to L like he'd originally planned. M got the house, which was all he wanted. All of this has cast a pall over everything and is making it almost impossible to actually grieve Grandma. I love that woman like she was my own, but I didn't expect anything more than what she paid me for care. I'm not officially part of the family, so the fact that she included me in the will was a shock. The money would be nice, but that's not why I cared for her. I'm more worried about M, fiancé and his sister S though. M has lost a brother, and fiancé and sister have lost an uncle because of this. This whole thing is hard enough for me, but it's worse for all of them. Grandma was the glue that held them all together. Introduced themselves as being from RCMP Major Crimes Division and that they were looking for me, balls. She says, "Oh, he lives downstairs, what do you want with him?" They thanked her and informed her that they couldn't say, as it was an active investigation. My heart sank, but then I had a thought. It only took about 15 minutes to do my statement and they went on their way. And then the fun began. I knew the rumor mill would be starting. She would tell everyone that would listen that Major Crimes was looking for me and that I must be some sort of criminal. I decided to see where this went. Pretty soon I'm getting side-eye in the hallway, neighbors are steering clear of me, so I know she's been talking. Turns out I've been arrested for robbery and kidnapping and must be out on bail according to her. I found this out when one of my neighbors who was on the condo board showed up with a letter demanding an explanation and threats to have me kicked out. I asked him what this was all about, and he said, well, Linda, not her name, sent us a letter about what had happened and we had to have an emergency board meeting because people don't feel safe with you here. I said that per the bylaws of the condo board, before any action could be taken, I could request a meeting to review and provide a defense. Linda was on the board, so I know she'd be there. They set a date for a week from then, but I was given a caution that it didn't look good for me and that I would have to do a lot of explaining. The meeting day comes. Linda is sitting smugly looking at me, the other board members are giving me dirty looks. The board president asks what I have to say in my defense. I stand and quietly distribute a letter on RCMP letterhead, signed by the regional superintendent that says Mr. Zenmedic is not under suspicion of any crimes, past or current, and has not been arrested, detained or questioned as a suspect in any criminal matter. His duties as a paramedic will often require him to make statements in regards to ongoing investigations, and in this instance on date, investigators had gone to obtain a statement about an ongoing investigation for which he was professionally involved. At no time did the members discuss, disclose or in any way indicate that he had any involvement in any wrongdoings. I am deeply saddened by the necessity of this letter and we will be reopening an investigation into a previous incident regarding false statements made against him. You could tell when people read and understood it. The dirty looks shifted from me to Linda. She exclaimed that it must be a forgery, she witnessed me being led off in handcuffs. She pleaded that they should believe her. It didn't help her. I stood and addressed the board and outlined the years of abuse and harassment, including the false accusation of break and enter to a vehicle. I informed the board that on advice of my lawyer that I do not discuss the matter further with any member of the board, as Linda being part of it and using her position for the purposes of harassment opened the board as a whole to litigation and I was still weighing my options. The next day I had a knock on my door. The board president had informed me that Linda was removed from the board and that she was given warning about her conduct and that any further harassment could result in proceedings to have her removed from the building. She also had a visit from police with a summons for providing a false statement and obstructing a peace officer. She had to attend court. She pled guilty to both and was given a suspended sentence and 1-year condition not to harass, threaten or intentionally inconvenience me in any way. If she abided her conditions, she would receive an absolute discharge, meaning it would be removed from her record, like it never happened. I moved to another province before her year was up, but for a brief period of time, I actually got to sleep in on Sunday mornings. Friends, you ask. Beats me. I shut that down quick and told them to never come through to my back garden again. But they weren't done and couldn't leave yet. They had the gall to propose, straight after being told to GTFO, that I give up roughly 1/5 of my garden so our gardens could be equally sized. I told them in no uncertain terms that they can forget it. Not my problem, they bought a house with a smaller garden. I was seeing red and I think they knew they'd pushed it too far as they scampered away. I guess James and Rose decided that since I wouldn't willingly give them part of my garden, they tried taking it instead. From my back room I saw some guy standing at the end of my garden. I went out to ask who he was and how the hell he got there, when in saunters, you guessed it, James and Rose. Turns out James and Rose had torn down our adjoining fence, and this guy was planning where the new one would go, clearly not having been told that it's my garden and I absolutely was not on board with this plan. Oh, but wait, they also peeped through my windows and had questions about my belongings. I do kickboxing and have a bob, a life-size training dummy, and did I know that it's scary and should probably be moved away from the window? They didn't want to see it whilst they were enjoying their newly enlarged garden. I calmly told the man that I was keeping all of my garden and none of them had my permission to be there. I also informed them that if I catch them in my garden again, they're volunteering to be my new bob. Last I heard, they tried to bully our 70-year-old neighbor into giving up part of his garden. He's got early onset dementia and his 4 of his 5 sons visit regularly, but don't live with him. I stay in contact with them as I go round to help my neighbor now and then, or just to chat and keep him company. He's a really cool guy and hearing him upset about some contract and losing where his shed is and I was fighting to not see red. One text to his sons and that nonsense was shut down real quick. I never thought I'd meet people this entitled, but here we are. Needless to say, James and Rose have kept their distance since my very explicit warnings, which extend to bothering our dear old neighbor too. My girlfriend is back to hanging up washing outside, but she won't open the front door without checking the ring cam first now, just in case it's them. Anyone else dealt with neighbors from hell like this? Edit, forgot to add. James and Rose also concreted over all of their front and back gardens and then got 4 cats. The amount of cat shit I have to pick up every day is wild. I've taken to picking it up and dumping the bags on the driveway. Edit 2, James and Rose are hated around here. A guy called Jim is our local handyman. Great at all those things you can't do, don't have the tools for, or don't have the skill to manage. Apparently after the first job he doubled his daily rate just for them. Either they won't hire him, or he'll get double the money, win-win.